Picture this. It is a random Tuesday afternoon, right around 2 p.m. You are sitting at your desk at work, supposedly staring at a spreadsheet, but your mind is miles away. Your phone is resting flat on the desk next to your keyboard, acting like a digital magnet pulling at your attention. You tell yourself you are just going to take a quick peek, just a tiny glance to see how things are going in the market today. You tap the screen, enter your passcode, and open your trading app. Instantly, your stomach drops. The screen is a sea of bright, glaring red. That stock you bought 2 weeks ago, the one everyone on the internet swore was going to the moon, is down 14%. The broad market index fund you felt so smart about buying last month is down 3% for the day. A heavy, anxious heat starts creeping up the back of your neck. You swallow hard, suddenly acutely aware of your own heartbeat thumping in your chest. You start doing the mental math, and it is brutal. That is 2 weeks of groceries gone in the last 3 hours. That is your car payment just evaporated into thin air. You swipe down to refresh the screen, hoping it is just a glitch, hoping the numbers will suddenly flip back to green, but they do not. In fact, right before your eyes, the numbers tick down again. Another $20 vanishes into the ether. The panic starts to set in. It is not a loud, screaming panic, but a quiet, desperate kind of dread. You start opening up news tabs on your browser, frantically searching for headlines to explain what is happening. Is there a new economic crisis? Did the Federal Reserve change interest rates again? Did a CEO say something stupid on a podcast? You scan through endless articles filled with financial jargon that only makes you feel more confused and out of control. Your internal monologue is racing a mile a minute. You tell yourself that you are an idiot for getting involved in the market in the first place. You think about how hard you worked for that money, how many hours you spent putting up with a job you only tolerate just to save those few $1,000s. And now, some invisible force in a stock exchange hundreds of miles away is just taking it from you, piece by piece. The urge to do something, anything, becomes overwhelming. Your brain is screaming at you to stop the bleeding. You stare at the sell button at the bottom of the screen. It looks so inviting. It represents safety. It represents an end to this awful, gnawing anxiety in your gut. If you just press it, the numbers will stop moving. You can lock away what you have left and never look at this stupid app again. You try to remember the advice you read online. Everyone says you should buy low and sell high. Everyone says you have to hold on for the long term. But holding on feels like standing in front of a freight train and hoping it stops before it hits you. The long term feels like a fantasy right now. The short term, the present moment, is all that matters, and the present moment is deeply painful. You watch the ticker for another 5 minutes. It drops another 0.5%. That does it. You cannot take the emotional roller coaster anymore. Your thumb hovers over the sell button, and with a heavy sigh, you press it. You confirm the transaction. Instantly, the red lines disappear, replaced by a static cash balance. At first, there is a massive rush of relief. The heavy weight lifts off your chest. The bleeding has stopped. You survived. You put your phone back in your pocket and actually manage to focus on your work. For the rest of the afternoon, you feel like you took back control of your life. But then, 3 days later, you check the news. The market rebounded. It shot up 4% in a single morning. The stock you sold is now trading higher than when you originally bought it. You check your static cash balance, and a hollow, sickening feeling of regret washes over you. You realize you locked in your losses and completely missed the recovery. You did not protect your money at all. You just paid a massive premium to make your anxiety go away for a few hours. If that sounds familiar, you aren't alone. That agonizing, chest-tightening roller coaster is the exact experience millions of beginners go through every single day. You aren't stupid for feeling that way, and you certainly aren't weak for pressing that sell button to make the pain stop. The truth is, the entire system is built to make you feel exactly like that. We are told from day one that investing is the only way to build long-term wealth. We are told we have to put our money to work, so inflation doesn't eat it alive. But nobody warns us about the quiet, heavy, emotional toll it actually takes. Nobody tells you how deeply exhausting it is to tie your sense of personal safety to a line on a screen. A line that bounces up and down for completely irrational reasons you cannot possibly control. You put your hard-earned money into the market, believing it is the responsible, adult thing to do. You do your research, you pick a few basic funds, and you feel a brief, fleeting moment of pride. You feel like you are finally taking charge of your future and building a real foundation. But that pride is incredibly fragile. It shatters the absolute second the market turns against you, even if it is just a completely normal Tuesday dip. What you are experiencing in those moments isn't a lack of financial knowledge. It isn't because you didn't read enough articles on Wall Street. It is a fundamental clash between your ancient human biology and modern financial technology. Your brain simply wasn't designed to handle real-time, digital financial fluctuations. Think about how our ancestors survived for thousands of years. They survived by reacting immediately and violently to immediate danger. If a sudden rustle in the bushes sounded like a predator, they didn't wait to analyze the long-term statistical trends of the forest. They just ran. Today, your brain interprets a sudden drop in your portfolio the exact same way. It sees the harsh color red. It sees your vital resources vanishing in real time. And it registers an immediate, life-threatening danger. Your nervous system literally floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your body screams at you to do something to survive the attack. And in the modern digital age, the equivalent of running away from a predator is panic selling your assets. It is the quickest, most accessible way to turn off those blaring alarm bells ringing inside your head. To make matters infinitely worse, the financial industry knows exactly how your brain works. They have spent decades studying how to push these exact biological buttons. They design their trading platforms to look and feel like casinos, keeping you constantly engaged and constantly on edge. They send you urgent push notifications the second a stock drops 2%. They flash bright red lights on your screen to heighten your sense of sheer urgency. They don't want you to buy a solid index fund and hold it quietly for 40 years. That is boring. And boring doesn't generate endless transaction fees. They want you panicked. And they want you excited. They want you trading in and out of the market, constantly reacting to the endless 24-hour news cycle, because every single time you react, someone else makes a tiny profit off your anxiety and exhaustion. So, when you finally crack and hit that sell button at the worst possible time, you aren't failing at investing. You are just doing exactly what the ecosystem was perfectly engineered to make you do. You are caught in a brilliant psychological trap that was set long before you ever downloaded that little app. Let us look at the actual numbers for a moment, because the data paints a completely undeniable picture of how widespread this problem is. Every year, financial research firms put out studies tracking how everyday retail investors perform compared to the overall market. The most famous of these is the Dalbar study, which has been tracking investor behavior for decades. Year after year, the results are almost exactly the same, and they are genuinely shocking when you first see them. Over a standard 20-year period, the broad market index, like the S&P 500, usually averages around an 8 to 10% return per year. But the average everyday investor does not make anywhere near that amount. In fact, the average investor usually takes home around 4 or 5% a year. They are massively underperforming the very market they are trying to invest in. That difference might sound small at first glance, but over 20 years, it is the difference between retiring comfortably at 60 and having to work another 10 years just to survive. So the obvious question is, why? Why are millions of people collectively losing out on half of their potential wealth? It is not because they are picking terrible companies that all go bankrupt. The data shows that the massive gap in returns comes almost entirely from bad timing, driven by emotional reactions. It comes from buying when the market is euphoric and selling when the market is terrified. It is known in the financial world as the behavior gap, and it exists because our modern society has built an entire ecosystem designed to maximize that exact destructive behavior. Think about the 24-hour financial news cycle. If you turn on any major business network, what do you see? You see bright red banners flashing across the bottom of the screen. You hear dramatic music playing as men in expensive suits shout over each other about impending economic doom. They make every tiny fluctuation in the stock market sound like a matter of life and death. You have to understand that these networks are not designed to make you a successful, calm, long-term investor. They are entertainment networks, and they sell your attention to advertisers. And human psychology dictates that nothing holds our attention quite like fear. and impending disaster. If a news anchor calmly told you to buy a low-cost index fund and go outside for a walk, nobody would watch the commercials. But the media is only one half of the trap. The other half is the trading platforms themselves. A decade ago, brokerages started offering zero-commission trades. They marketed this as a massive win for the little guy. They said they were democratizing finance and giving everyone a fair shot at building wealth. But in reality, it was one of the most brilliant psychological traps ever laid in the financial industry. Because if the trades are free, the brokerage has to make money some other way. And the way they make money is through volume. They sell the flow of your orders to larger institutions. That means they only make money when you are actively pressing the buy and sell buttons. If you buy a stock and hold it for 20 years, you are essentially dead weight to them. They need you to be hyperactive. To guarantee that hyperactivity, they hired the exact same software engineers and behavioral psychologists who designed casino slot machines and social media feeds. They gamified the entire experience of interacting with your life savings. They added bursts of digital confetti when you make a trade. They made the interface incredibly slick, frictionless, and brightly colored. Every single notification they push to your phone is carefully calibrated to trigger a spike of dopamine or cortisol in your brain. They want checking your stock portfolio to feel exactly like checking your social media likes. They want it to become an uncontrollable twitch, a habit you do while waiting in line for coffee or sitting at a red light. So when you combine a media complex that profits off your constant anxiety with a digital tool that profits off your constant movement, the end result is a wealth extraction machine. It is a system that literally transfers money from impatient, anxious, everyday people to patient, cold-blooded institutions. This is why you have to stop blaming yourself for feeling panicked when the market drops. You are not weak for wanting to sell. You are just a normal human being walking through a digital minefield that was designed by experts to blow up your emotional stability. But once you see the trap for what it is, you can finally start building a system to step right around it. Here's what most people don't realize. Your brain is essentially a prehistoric survival machine that has been forcefully dropped into a modern digital casino. For hundreds of thousands of years, human beings evolved to prioritize avoiding pain over acquiring pleasure. In the harsh environment of early human history, missing out on a delicious meal meant you went hungry for a day, but failing to notice a predator meant you were dead. Because of this, our brains developed a massive evolutionary bias toward negative information. In the field of behavioral economics, this concept is known as loss aversion. Studies consistently show that the psychological pain of losing $100 is roughly twice as intense as the joy of finding $100. Your brain is literally hardwired to freak out when it perceives a loss. When you see your portfolio drop by 10%, your neurological system doesn't view it as a temporary market fluctuation. It views it as a direct, physical threat to your survival and your future security. This is why looking at a red portfolio feels like a punch to the gut. The amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain, lights up and takes complete control away from the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and long-term planning. You lose your ability to think rationally about the next 20 years because your amygdala is screaming at you to survive the next 20 minutes. This biological hijack is the root cause of almost every single bad financial decision beginners make. But loss aversion is only the first part of the psychological trap. The second part is a phenomenon called action bias. When humans feel threatened or anxious, we feel an overwhelming urge to do something. Sitting still and doing nothing feels incredibly vulnerable, almost cowardly. We want to take charge, fix the problem, and restore order to our chaotic environment. In almost every other area of your life, action bias serves you well. If your roof is leaking, you climb up and fix it. If you feel sick, you go to the doctor and get medicine. If you're failing a class, you study harder. Society rewards us for taking immediate, decisive action to solve our problems. But the stock market is the one place on earth where taking immediate action is usually the absolute worst thing you can possibly do. Think about it like being a passenger on a commercial airplane flying through heavy turbulence. The plane is shaking violently, the lights are flickering, and your Stomach is dropping with every sudden dip. Your instinct, your action bias, might make you want to run to the cockpit, grab the controls, and try to steer the plane yourself. But you aren't a pilot. If you touch those controls, you're going to crash the plane. The smartest thing you can do during financial turbulence is exactly what you do on that airplane. You put your seatbelt on, take a deep breath, and do absolutely nothing. You have to trust the system you bought into. But sitting on your hands while your life savings bounces around is agonizing. It requires fighting against every natural instinct in your body that is begging you to take control. This brings us to the third psychological hurdle, which is the illusion of control. When you open a trading app, the slick interface gives you a false sense of power. You have charts, you have news, feeds, and you have buy and sell buttons right at your fingertips. It makes you feel like you're driving a sports car. But the reality is that you're riding in the back seat of a massive, complex, global economy. You can't control interest rates. You can't control corporate earnings. And you certainly can't control the geopolitical events that move the markets. The only thing you actually control is your own behavior. But because the app gives you so many buttons to press, you trick yourself into believing that your frantic trading is somehow protecting you. You confuse motion with progress, and you confuse anxiety with diligence. Until you understand these invisible psychological forces at play, you'll always be a victim of them. You'll keep trying to outsmart a biological system that has been evolving for 1,000,000 years, using nothing but raw willpower. And willpower is a terrible strategy when it comes to money. Willpower is finite, and it eventually runs out when you're tired, stressed, or scared. To actually win this game, you have to stop fighting your own brain. You have to accept that you're an emotional creature who will always feel the sting of loss aversion and the itch of action bias. Once you accept that reality, you can stop relying on discipline and start relying on systems. You can build a financial life that protects you from yourself. So how do you actually build a financial life that protects you from yourself? How do you stop relying on your incredibly flawed human willpower and start relying on a machine that never gets tired or scared? The answer lies in a concept that behavioral psychologists call a Ulysses contract. It is the single most powerful tool. You have to defeat your own worst impulses, and it has absolutely nothing to do with being perfectly disciplined. The name comes from ancient Greek mythology. The hero Ulysses was sailing his ship near the island of the Sirens, whose beautiful songs would entrance any sailor and cause them to crash their ships into the rocky shores. Ulysses wanted to hear the song, but he knew that if he did, he would lose his mind and steer his crew to their deaths. He knew his future self could not be trusted. So, while he was still calm and rational, he made a plan. He ordered his men to fill their ears with beeswax so they could not hear the music. Then, he had them tie him tightly to the mast of the ship. He gave them strict orders not to untie him, no matter how much he begged or threatened them. Once the music started, he essentially locked his future, irrational self out of the decision-making process. He built a system where his willpower was no longer a factor. In modern personal finance, the sirens are not mythical creatures on an island. They are the flashing red and green lights of the stock market. They are the terrifying news, headlines, and the sudden drops in your portfolio that make you want to steer your financial ship straight into the rocks by panic selling. To survive, you have to tie yourself to the mast. You have to make the decision to invest once, right now, while your head is clear, and completely automate the process, so your future emotional self cannot interfere. You cannot rely on yourself to log into your brokerage account and manually click the buy button on the 15th of every single month. Your brain will always find a perfectly logical excuse not to do it. If the market is down, you will tell yourself to wait until things stabilize. If the market is up, you will tell yourself to wait for a dip. The human brain is an absolute master at justifying inaction when it is scared. To build your Ulysses contract, you have to completely remove yourself from the equation. You need to set up a system where the exact day your paycheck hits your checking account, A predetermined percentage is instantly routed directly to your investment platform. It happens in the background, silently, before you even have a chance to look at your bank balance and feel wealthy. But just moving the money is only step one. The second, and most crucial step, is automating the actual purchase. The cash cannot just sit there waiting for you to deploy it, because that puts you right back in the driver's seat. You must set your account to automatically buy a broad market index fund, like the S&P 500 or a total stock market fund, the exact moment the cash settles. Why a broad market index fund? Because it entirely removes the burden of choice and the paralyzing fear of picking the wrong company. You are not betting on a single tech startup or a specific retail chain. You do not have to lose sleep wondering if a CEO is going to make a catastrophic mistake. You are simply buying a tiny slice of the greatest wealth-generating machine in human history. You are betting on the long-term upward trajectory of human progress. When you implement this level of total automation, something fascinating happens to your psychology. At first, it might feel a little boring. You miss the rush of checking the charts and feeling like a hotshot trader. But very quickly, that boredom turns into a profound sense of peace. The anxiety completely fades away because the money you are investing ceases to exist in your daily mental accounting. You simply adjust your lifestyle to the remaining balance in. People always worry about the timing of this automated system. They ask what happens if their automatic transfer hits on the exact day the market crashes. The beautiful truth is that over a Plies 30 or 40-year timeline, it simply does not matter. This strategy is called dollar cost averaging. Sometimes your automated system will buy when prices are at an all-time high. Other times, it will buy when the market is bleeding out and prices are incredibly cheap. Over the decades, those purchase prices average out. You capture the massive, undeniable growth of the market without ever having to endure the soul-crushing ulcer of trying to time the perfect entry point. You are no longer fighting the chaotic waves of the global economy. You are simply tied safely to the mast, letting the wind do the work for you, entirely protected from the dangerous songs of your own panic. Now, you might have automated everything perfectly. You might have set up the transfers and the automatic purchasing so that your money is flowing right into index funds the second you get paid. But if you stop there, you are still going to fail. Automation is only half of the system. The second half is what I call the information diet, because it does not matter how perfectly automated your investments are if you are still constantly exposing your brain to the toxic, real-time data feed that causes you to panic in the first place. You have to cut the cord. Think about it like planting a tree in your backyard. If you plant a seed on a Sunday, you do not go out on Monday morning, dig up the dirt, and pull the seed out to check if the roots are growing. If you did that every single day, the tree would eventually die. It needs time, darkness, and undisturbed peace to actually grow. Your investment portfolio works the exact same way. The human brain was never meant to receive real-time, second-by-second feedback on a project that takes 40 years to complete. It completely breaks our perception of time. So, you have to take a terrifying but necessary step. You have to delete the trading app from your phone. I know how drastic that sounds. For a lot of people, deleting that app feels like walking out the front door and leaving the stove on. It feels irresponsible. You tell yourself that you need the app to stay informed, to keep an eye on your money, and to be a responsible adult. But you have to recognize that this is just your anxiety talking. You do not need the app needs you. Let us be completely honest with ourselves. You are not a high-frequency day trader working on Wall Street. You do not have millions of dollars of client money riding on the outcome of a quarterly earnings report. Your financial survival does not depend on knowing what the market is doing at 2 o'clock on a random Tuesday. The push notifications, the flashing lights, the breaking news alerts, they are not giving you an edge. They are just feeding you a constant drip of stress hormones that will eventually wear down your willpower. By deleting the app from your phone, you are introducing a concept called intentional friction. Friction is the secret weapon to breaking any bad habit. When the app is on your home screen, the friction between feeling anxious and checking your portfolio is basically zero. It takes half a second and a thumb swipe to feed your addiction. But when you remove the app, you create a physical and Temporal barrier between your impulse and your action. Here's the new rule you have to set for yourself. If you absolutely must check your portfolio, you are only allowed to do it on a desktop or laptop computer. You have to physically walk into another room, sit down at a desk, turn the computer on, open a web browser, and manually type in your incredibly long, complicated password. You should purposely not save the password in your browser. Make yourself type out every single character. That simple barrier changes everything. By the time you sit down, wait for the screen to load, and type in that annoying password, the sudden spike of emotional panic has usually passed. Your rational brain has had a few minutes to catch up and talk you down from the ledge. You will find that 90% of the time, the urge to check the market completely vanishes. The second, you realize you actually have to get up off the couch to do it. You realize the effort is just not worth it. But the information diet does not stop at deleting your trading app. You also have to aggressively clean up your social media and news feeds. You need to go onto your platforms and ruthlessly unfollow the financial gurus, the stock-picking influencers, and the daily market commentators. These people make their living by constantly churning out dramatic content. They need the market to sound exciting and dangerous, so you will keep watching their videos and buying their courses. Remember how the algorithms work. If you click on one article about an impending economic crash, the algorithm will instantly flood your feed with 10 more articles saying the exact same thing. It creates a powerful echo chamber that makes you feel like the entire global economy is collapsing, even when things are completely fine. You have to actively starve that algorithm. Whenever you see a dramatic financial headline, you must train yourself to scroll past it immediately. The ultimate goal here is to practice something called benign neglect. Benign neglect means you care deeply about your future, so you build a strong system, and then you intentionally ignore it. Good investing should not feel like an action movie. It should feel like watching paint dry. It should be the most boring, uneventful part of your entire financial life. If you are feeling adrenaline when you think about your investments, you are doing something terribly wrong. Think about how people treat the value of their homes. For most people, their house is their largest financial asset. But nobody gets a push notification every 5 minutes telling them the exact market value of their living room. Nobody panic sells their house just because the real estate market dipped 3% on a Thursday. You just live in the house. You trust that over 20 years, the value will generally go up. You treat it with benign neglect. You have to start treating your index funds the exact same way. When you combine the Ulysses contract with a strict information diet, you build an impenetrable fortress around your wealth. You automate the good behavior, and you add massive friction to the bad behavior. You stop relying on discipline and start relying on environment design. You finally free your mind from the exhausting daily roller coaster, and you give your money the one thing it desperately needs to grow. You give it time. To truly understand why you have to build this automated fortress around your money, you have to look at the cold, hard mathematics of trying to outsmart the system, because the numbers tell a story that completely shatters the illusion of market timing. Let us look at a standard 20-year period in the stock market, say from the early 2000s up until recently. Imagine you took $10,000 and invested it in a basic S&P 500 index fund, and then you did absolutely nothing. You never checked the news. You never looked at the app. You just let it sit there in total darkness. Over those 2 decades, through multiple recessions, a housing crisis, and a global pandemic, that $10,000 would have quietly grown to roughly $65,000. That is a massive, life-changing return on your money just for sitting on your hands and trusting the long-term trajectory of the economy. Your money multiplied more than 6 times over, simply because you stayed out of its way. But now, imagine a different scenario. Imagine you were the active, anxious investor. You kept the trading app on your phone. Every time the market started to drop, you got scared, sold your index funds to protect your cash, and waited for the dust to settle before buying back in. In doing so, you managed to miss the absolute worst days in the market, but you also ended up missing the 10 single best days. Just 10 days out of roughly 5,000 trading days over a 20-year period. You might think missing just 10 random days would not matter that much over 2 decades. But the mathematical reality is devastating. Missing just those 10 best days cuts your final portfolio value almost exactly in half. Instead of $65,000, you end up with barely over $30,000. Half of your wealth, decades of financial freedom, completely wiped out because you missed 10 single days of rapid growth. The reason this happens is one of the most counterintuitive secrets of the financial world. The stock market does not go up in a smooth, predictable, straight line. It moves in sudden, violent bursts. And those massive upward bursts almost always happen immediately after the most terrifying market crashes. The best days are permanently hidden inside the worst weeks. When the market is down 20% and everyone on television is screaming about an impending depression, that is exactly when the market will suddenly snap back up 5% on a random Tuesday morning. If you are sitting in cash, waiting to feel safe before you invest, you will miss that snapback entirely. You will only feel safe enough to buy back in after the market has already recovered, meaning you permanently locked in your losses and paid a massive premium just to soothe your anxiety. And because compounding interest relies on multiplying your base amount over time, crippling that base early on destroys the mathematical curve of your wealth for the rest of your life. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what if the market is literally crashing right now? What if the news is saying this time is different, and we are heading into a decade-long recession? I get it. It is incredibly hard to trust a mathematical model when it feels like the sky is actually falling outside your window. Your brain wants to protect you from the immediate threat, but you have to remember that every single time the market has ever crashed in modern history, people said that exact same thing. They always say this time is different. And every single time, the market has eventually recovered and gone on to hit new all-time highs. The absolute mathematically provable real risk is not being in the market when it drops. The real risk is not being in the market when it unexpectedly surges. You cannot predict those surges. Nobody can predict them. Not the guys in the expensive suits on financial television. And certainly not you looking at a red line on your smartphone during your lunch break. This brings us to your 24-hour challenge. I am not asking you to change your entire financial philosophy overnight. I am asking you to do one specific, uncomfortable thing in the next 24 hours. To start breaking this cycle, I want you to pick up your phone, find your primary investing app, press down on the icon until it wiggles, and hit delete. Do not log out. Do not move it to a hidden folder. Completely delete the application from your device. Then, I want you to log into your brokerage account on a computer and set up a recurring, automatic transfer to buy a broad market index fund the day after your next paycheck clears. Set it for $50 or $100 or whatever you can comfortably afford to ignore. That is it. You do not have to become a financial expert. You just have to build the machine, turn it on, and walk away. You have to start introducing friction to your bad habits and taking your emotional brain entirely out of the driver's seat. Once you put that friction in place and walk away, the first thing you'll notice is the silence. Your brain is going to feel surprisingly empty for a few days. You'll reach for your phone while waiting in line at the grocery store, expecting to see those familiar red and green charts. But the app won't be there. You'll experience a tiny wave of withdrawal. That's totally normal. It just proves how addicted your neurological system had become to the constant dopamine feed of the financial markets. But after a week or two, that withdrawal fades, and something incredible takes its place. You reclaim your mental bandwidth. You stop letting a group of strangers on Wall Street dictate your emotional state for the day. You realize that the sun still rises, your coffee still tastes good, and your life keeps moving forward entirely, independently of whatever the broad market happens to be doing. You detach your personal sense of safety from the chaotic daily fluctuations of the global economy. Look, here's the truth about modern investing culture. We're constantly fed this toxic narrative that building wealth has to be a relentless, aggressive hustle. We're told we need to grind. We need to constantly optimize our portfolios. And we need to beat the market. But investing isn't a hustle. It's the exact opposite. True, sustainable investing is the Ultimate anti-hustle. It's the one domain in human existence where laziness and apathy are highly rewarded. Doing absolutely nothing is your greatest competitive advantage. You have to fundamentally reframe your entire definition of what wealth actually is. Society wants you to believe that wealth is a loud, flashy thing. They want you to think it's about buying luxury cars, wearing expensive watches, and posting screenshots of your massive trading gains on the internet. But that isn't wealth. That's just performative spending. Real wealth is incredibly quiet. Real wealth is the absence of anxiety. The true purpose of investing isn't to give you a quick adrenaline rush on a Tuesday afternoon. It isn't a video game where you're trying to rack up a high score. The real purpose of putting your money into the market is to buy back your future freedom. You're purchasing autonomy. You're building a financial shield that will eventually allow you to walk away from a toxic boss, or take a 6-month sabbatical, or handle a medical emergency without experiencing a full-blown panic attack. Think back to that person we talked about at the very beginning. The person sitting at their desk, sweating, heart racing, desperately wanting to hit the sell button just to make the pain stop. That person is a prisoner to their own money. Their wealth isn't serving them. Their wealth is actively harming their mental health and draining their energy. They're sacrificing their present peace of mind for a future that might not even materialize if they keep panic selling. Now compare them to the person who has a fully automated system. The person who gets paid on Friday automatically buys an index fund on Monday and never even looks at the transaction. That person couldn't tell you if the market is up or down today. They're too busy actually living their life. They're playing with their kids, learning a new language, or just enjoying a quiet walk outside. Their money is quietly working in the background, entirely out of sight and out of mind. That's the ultimate goal here. The greatest luxury that financial stability can provide is the ability to stop thinking about money altogether. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that your financial house is in order, that your future self is taken care of, and that you don't have to rely on your incredibly flawed human willpower to make it happen. You've built the machine, you've tied yourself to the mast, and you've let the system do the heavy lifting. Money is just a tool, and a tool is only as good as the system that guides it. If you let your emotions drive the tool, it'll cut you. But if you lock the tool inside a rational, automated system, it'll build you a fortress. It's time to step out of the casino, turn off the endless noise, and start playing the long, quiet game of real wealth creation. I want you to really think about this dynamic as you go about your week. What's one specific area of your life where you'd feel a massive sense of relief if you just had a little more financial padding? What does true, quiet freedom actually look like to you? Let me know down in the comments, because writing it out is often the first step to making it real.